Hello everyone, this is Sue Reynolds, President of the American Student Achievement Institute, the home of Redesigning School Counseling. This video is intended for educators who are interested in the Lilly Endowment Comprehensive School Counseling Initiative. And during this video, we will help you think about writing your Lilly planning grant. As a reminder, this video is part of a 4-part video series. We're assuming that listeners to this video have already viewed the Lilly School Counseling Initiative overview or have become very familiar with the counseling initiative in other ways. So the focus of this video will be writing your planning grant, and then the next 2 videos will focus on the technical assistance that our organization will provide for schools as they go through the planning process. So again, the purpose of the video series is to help Indiana schools districts understand how RSC can be used during the planning phase in the Lilly School Counseling Initiative. And all of these videos are available at www.asainstitute.org/Lilly. So just a quick review, the Lilly Counseling Initiative Planning Grant is available to all Indiana public schools. It is a non-competitive grant. Its deadline is December 15th, and then the grant period will fall between January 20th or somewhere close to that. Lilly's anticipating that they'll notify all schools about their receipt of the grant by January 20th. And then the period will end on May 19th when the implementation grant is due to Lilly. So the purpose of the planning grant is to cover expenses that you will have as you design a comprehensive school counseling program that will increase the number of K-12 students in Indiana who do those 5 things, who are emotionally healthy, realize academic success, graduate from high school, obtain valuable post-secondary credentials necessary for meaningful employment, and are prepared to compete and prosper in a global society in which they will live and work. As a reminder, the planning grant amounts differ depending on how many students are in the district. If your district has less than 5,000 students, the award to your district will be $30,000. And if the district has 5,000 or more students, the award per district is $50,000. So let's just begin with the question, what is a planning period? And we think it's really helpful to think of a planning period as a think tank. It's a time where people are going to come together really with a blank piece of paper and just say, if we want to design a really fantastic, comprehensive school counseling program that meets our students' needs, what would that look like? And really we're thinking, let's throw out everything that we know up to this date. Let's start from scratch and just build this program up. We know that we'll keep some of the initiatives that we're currently doing, but we'll find other delivery models and other activities that will make more sense for our school. So we also want to begin by explaining that in our organization, the American Student Achievement Institute, we do not believe that there's a one-size-fits-all model for school counseling. We believe that a model that might be working in Houston works in Houston because it works for their students in their community. But the model that's going to be best for your school and your community may be different than that's in Houston. So we suspect that your model, that's the right model for your school, may have bits and pieces of that model in Houston or San Diego, but it may also include things that nobody's ever done before, that you're the first ones to think about. So instead of replicating a model, we believe that program planning is a discovery process. It's a process that helps you develop a model school counseling initiative that is right for your students in your community. And again, it may include activities found in other schools' programs, or it may include original activities that you guys dream up for the first time, and it's something amazing. It's just nobody's ever thought of it before. So it can be original work as well as replicating components of a model. So what will you be talking about then during this planning phase when you're in think tank mode? Well, we think that these are some possible discussion topics that usually are part of a planning process. One discussion might be about your program's goals. And some key questions during that time are these. In high-achieving schools, what choices do students tend to make? If we know what those choices are, then we can design our school counseling program to help kids make those choices. And then we want to put some baseline data to that. What percentage of our students are making these choices right now? So examples of choices might be students turning in their homework, students choosing to visit college campuses, students choosing to submit a FAFSA. So the goals that in that discussion all center, from our perspective, on what choices do we want kids to make. Then another possible discussion topic in your planning phase might be root causes. That question is, what situations are interfering with our students' ability to make those choices that we want them to make? So there could be a lot of things that interfere, but they tend to fall into 3 areas. One is that students don't have the knowledge that they need to make those choices. They maybe don't know what a FAFSA is, so they can't choose to complete a FAFSA. They don't have the means to visit a college campus. They want to, but they just can't get there. So that would be a root cause. So it may be lacking in knowledge, like they don't know what a FAFSA is, or it may be lacking an opportunity, like not having the opportunity to do a campus visit. And it could also be a social and emotional concern that's interfering with their ability to make all kinds of choices, not just the choices related to sound school counseling programs. Okay, another possible discussion is number 3, activity research and then activity selection. So in this progression of steps, we've started out with goals. We've figured out what the root causes are, why kids aren't making those choices. And now we want to research activities that would help kids make those choices, and then select the activities that we're going to include in our comprehensive school counseling model. So we're doing research, and then we're answering the question, what activities will be included in our model for our school? And then some examples might be to have kids do a homework log, or to take a post-secondary tour, or to set up a program where there's financial aid mentoring. Okay, so that's the activity step. And then the last discussion might be around the program delivery. In a traditional school counseling program, the delivery of all of the activities happens by the counselors. It may be one-to-one student guidance or counseling, and it may be counselors going into a classroom to do a guidance lesson. But that's a traditional program delivery model. In a non-traditional program delivery model, there are people other than or in addition to school counselors that are delivering activities. It may be teachers as part of a teacher advisor program, or classroom teachers that have included a guidance application as a real-world application of the academic content that they're teaching. It may be parents who are part of a program where parents are engaged to sit down with their kids to teach guidance content. Or it may be community organizations that have decided, like a service club or economic development council or the public library or a faith-based organization, that have been organized and coordinated in the delivery of school counseling activities. So the questions in this section are, once we know what the activities are going to be, then who's going to implement those activities? Is it going to be the counselors? Is it going to be community organizations? Is it going to be part of a teacher advisor program? And then how do we sequence these activities so they make sense? One example, it may be that the activity is, let's say a post-secondary campus visit. So the counselors maybe are going to introduce that concept to the students, that they should be visiting post-secondary campuses. And then maybe one of the service clubs, say the Kiwanis Club, has organized a field trip on a Saturday where they're going to get kids on a bus and take them around to visit different types of campuses. And then maybe also the PTA has met with their parents in the same month and have talked to the parents about the importance of making campus visits and taught parents how to set them up and what kind of questions to ask when they're on campus. So all of these activities can be sequenced in a meaningful way and can be delivered by many different providers. And that would be a non-traditional model versus a traditional model where it's the counselors that are delivering that. And just an aside, our organization during the implementation phase of the Lilly initiative will be providing technical assistance on how to establish the non-traditional program delivery, how to design the curriculum, how to engage the providers, how to train the providers. So we'll be setting that all up during the implementation stage later. Okay, so during the planning phase then, when we're still planning what we're going to do in this comprehensive school counseling program, who do you bring to the table for these discussions that we just talked about? Well, again, this is from our perspective, but in our organization, we like, when we have these discussions, planning discussions, we like to bring different stakeholder groups from the school to the table. So teachers, administrators, counselors, students especially, and parents. And then we also want to bring community partners to the table. So economic development is probably, we feel, the most important partner because they're really interested in helping schools design the workforce that they will be employing 10 years from now. So economic development is huge. Business and industry, especially people from human resources in business and industry, because like economic development, they're interested in the workforce a decade from now. Community foundation, local government, mental health organizations, faith-based organizations, youth-serving organizations like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or 4-H, service clubs like Kiwanis or Lions, public library, higher ed, all kinds of higher ed, so two-year college, four-year college, apprenticeship programs, skill building in the military, and then sending schools. So if you are a middle school, that would be the elementary schools that send their students to you. And receiving schools, so if you're a high school, it would be, again, the post-secondary institutions. If you're a middle school, it would be the high school. So these really are all the folks in your community who are interested in kids and interested in economic development and the community's well-being and students' well-being. So those are all the folks that we believe should be part of this discussion that you have as you're planning your model school counseling initiative for your district. Okay, so as you're having these discussions about goals and root causes and activities, what data fields might be helpful to you? And again, this is our perspective. When we are working with schools in districts in setting their program goals, the data that we like to look at are students' career plans, students' post-secondary plans, and then the percentage of students who are making sound choices in areas that impact social emotional health, academic planning and guidance, college preparation, career exploration, and readiness. So we're really looking at the things that impact students' futures as well as their academic success during the time that they're in your schools. So that's several different data points in goal setting. Then when it comes to root causes or the things that might be getting in the way of kids making sound choices, then we want to know, what knowledge do kids have? Do they understand career opportunities and pathways? Do they understand academic opportunities and pathways? Do they understand college applications and how to explore colleges and financial aid, all those academic opportunities? And do they understand and have knowledge of personal social skills so that they're able to get along with their peers and their teachers and someday their employers? Okay, then another type of root cause, another thing that could be getting in the way of their making good choices, is we want to bring together data that would help us understand if the kids have social personal issues that are interfering with their learning. So that's another set of data. Then we also want to know what they think about their school counselors, and specifically what do they think of their counselors' knowledge, level of knowledge, their skills, and their dispositions. And again, our thinking is that if the students don't feel that the counselors have knowledge and skills, or that if their counselors, if they don't think that their counselors' dispositions make them approachable, then it's likely that the students are not going to be seeking the counselors help. And so we think that the perception of their school counselors is a tremendous resource that counselors have, is their perception. And then finally, we want to look at, is the school counseling program providing opportunities? Maybe students know what a FAFSA is, but we just never give them the opportunity to get a FAFSA. You know, we don't announce to the students how to get them, and or where there's extra help for them in their completion, etc. So those are the root causes. Some high school examples, but we could easily give middle school and elementary examples as well. And then finally, once the activities are identified that you're going to do and put in place, then we want to have pre- and post-student choice data that's specifically related to those activities. That way we can know later if the activities are having an impact on the choices that kids are making. So again, this is just data that we find helpful when we're working with schools, and I think as you go into the planning process, you might want to be thinking about how are you going to gather this type of data. Okay, so the next question is, in the planning process, second semester of this year, when you brought everybody to the table and you're getting ready to have all of those discussions, who's managing this process in your district? Well, we can think of a couple of ways to do this. One model is that there's a single person, and that one person manages everything about the program design process. Another model is to have a steering team that's facilitating all of this, and we would suggest, and again this is just from our perspective, we would suggest a 5-person team, and that among that team there would be a delegation of tasks. So one person would be in charge of collecting data, another person would be in charge of recruiting the discussion participants and then communicating with them. A third person would be in charge of facilitating the actual discussions after people are all gathered together. And then a fourth one would be in charge of making sure that all the model program research has been coordinated and is being done. And then the fifth one is the person that's going to be in charge of documentation, so writing any reports that you want to maintain, and then later writing your implementation grant at the end of the planning process. So that would be, we think, a really good way to delegate the tasks. But again, this could also just be one person that's going to facilitate everything. So just different ways to look at it. Okay, so next question is, what are some possible costs associated with your planning? Well, if we look at the purpose of the funds, let's think about that first. The purpose of the funds, according to Lilly, is to conduct research, assess strengths and weaknesses, engage your stakeholders, engage consultants, and other appropriate purposes. So as you're doing those things, some costs that may come up, and again this is in Lilly's RFP, some costs that may come up are travel costs, technical assistance and consultant costs, substitute personnel needed so your counselors and others can engage in research in proposal planning and development, conference fees, and similar expenses, really all logical expenses to doing the tasks that are listed in the top part of this slide. Expenses related to research, assessment, and engaging stakeholders and consultants. Okay, so what needs to be included in the planning grant? Well, again, if we go back to Lilly's RFP, we see that there are kind of 3 sections in your planning grant. The first section is to include a cover sheet, and then the narrative has 7 parts in it. It's a 5-page max. So part 1 is you're giving a brief overview of your counseling program. The one specific that Lilly wanted to see was the number and type of staff members that you have. The second component was the strengths and challenges with addressing student needs in these 4 areas. The third component was to list your community partners and describing their contribution, their efforts. 4 is to describe your level of commitment to implementing best practices in the school, in model school counseling programs. What's your level of commitment? And then 5 is probably where the meat of this proposal is. In 5, you describe the planning strategies and activities to be supported by the grant. Now, I want to just pause there for a moment, because when we're talking with districts, we're seeing some confusion there. Districts are thinking that in this section they're supposed to describe the strategies and activities that they'll actually do to serve students in their comprehensive model. But what this grant is talking about is the planning and activities, strategies and activities that you're going to do in the planning phase. So you're going to convene a group to discuss your goals and your root causes and your activities. You're going to collect data. So all the things that you have to do in the planning phase, not the implementation phase. Because when you think about it, we don't know yet what we're going to do in the implementation phase. That's going to be decided during your planning phase. So this is just planning strategies and planning activities. Okay, number 6, Lily's also asking you to describe the school personnel and the community partners that are going to be invited to help create the implementation grant during the planning phase. Who's going to come together to create that implementation grant? And then finally 7, the last thing you'll list in your narrative is the technical assistance you're going to need during the planning grant phase. Then the third part of the grant is appendices, and then there's a 5-page max on the appendices. So a detailed line item budget and a budget narrative, and then an exempt status and charity foundation status information form, and that Lilly provides that with the RFP. And then a letter of support or endorsement from your principal or superintendent. So those are the components of the planning grant, and I'll come back with some more tips on each of those components in a second. Okay, so let's talk about the technical assistance providers for a moment. That is one of the things that you need to describe in your planning grant. So a technical assistance provider is someone who helps you do things that you either don't know how to do or you don't have time to do. So as we're thinking about our work with schools and what kind of technical assistance you might need, we're kind of thinking that schools might need technical assistance in these 4 areas. One is just with the planning process, someone to provide you with not only a proven process, but also a timeline for implementing that process. Someone who can help you set up a meaningful organizational structure that's going to work well and efficiently. Someone to facilitate your planning process. In other words, they would actually come into your school and meet and collect, convene all of the stakeholder groups and actually run that discussion themselves. Or instead of actually coming in and facilitating the process themselves, they would develop leaders within your school or district who can facilitate the process. And we actually like that second choice a little better because we think it's sustainable, because after the funding is finished, is gone, if you've developed leaders in your school who can sustain a planning process, then you can just keep replicating the planning process year after year after year, well beyond the period of the grant. Whereas if you've hired someone to come into your school to facilitate that planning process, when the grant is finished and you can't pay that person anymore, then your expertise is gone. If you're developing leaders in your school, then the expertise remains in your school. So just something to think about as you're talking with technical assistance providers. And then finally, a technical assistance provider can provide feedback as you're going through the process, and they can provide on-call support when you need help along the way. Okay, so one task then that a provider can help you with is just the planning process. Another thing they can help you with is in the collecting data. They can help you collect student data. They can either tell you what to collect or actually provide you with tools for collecting that data. And out of that data then you'll be able to come up with your student needs. And then they can also help you collect program data so that you can look at your alignment with best practices in model school counseling programs. And again, they can either tell you what to collect or they can provide you with tools to do that collection, or both. Okay, the third thing that a provider can help you with is in assessing your program strengths and weaknesses. And again, with looking at how your program aligns with best practices in model school counseling programs. And then finally, they can help you research model programs. That's something you could probably do yourself. And several of these things you could probably do yourselves. But again, if you don't have the time, you could hire a technical assistance provider to do that research for you. So using that FAFSA example again, let's say that you've looked at your data and you've discovered that your school has a relatively high percentage of free and reduced lunch students, and at the same time a relatively low percentage of students who are completing a FAFSA. Then you might want to hire someone to help you research model programs across the country that help with students with FAFSA completion. So, okay, so lots of different ways that a technical assistance provider could help you. Okay, so the next question is, where do you start? Well, there's some things that we'd like to suggest in terms of activities or things to think about before you actually begin writing your grant. First of all, logistics. Who's going to write that district application? Remember, it is a district application. So who's going to be responsible for writing that district application? And who will be a point person in each school who will coordinate and communicate with that district grant writer? Okay, in the middle section, there's some decisions to make about your planning process. Will the planning discussions occur at just the district level, or will they happen within each school? Our perspective, and again, this is from our organization, that if you can get those discussions down to the school level, this whole initiative will be so much richer. Because really, when we're designing a model school counseling program, it's all about those discussions. It's about engaging people in those discussions, and then first as thinkers, and then as doers as we're implementing the programs. If we can get those discussions down to the building level, that's really powerful. And so that's something we'd really like you to think about. And then number two, if you are going to have the discussions at the school level, will all schools in the district be using the same planning process? There's advantages and disadvantages to that. The advantage is that if everybody's using the same process, then everybody's using the same terminology, everybody has the same timeline, it's really easy for schools to communicate with each other, to communicate with district, everybody's kind of on the same page. The disadvantage is that if one school doesn't like the process you're using and they're just coming along unwillingly, they are likely to just jump through hoops without really engaging in the process. So that's the downside. I think the best way to approach this from our perspective is to find one model and then really do work with the schools to help them understand why that model is so important, and really to have everybody buy into that one model. Okay, then in terms of funding, some pre-grant planning discussions are, first of all, how much planning money is the district eligible for? So that's either going to be the $30,000 or the $50,000. And then how much funding may each school spend to support planning activities at their building level? So let's say you're a very, very small district with 2 schools and you've got $30,000 coming to you. Are you thinking, I'm going to keep $20,000 of that at the district level and only send $5,000 apiece to the schools? Or are you thinking, we're just going to funnel all that money down to the schools to support their planning at the building level and provide $15,000 for each of the schools? So that's something that before we start to write the grants, we really need to think about, you know, where is that funding going to flow to? Is it all going to stay at district? Is it all going to go down to the building level, or part with the district and part with the buildings? And then finally, something that we think is important to think about ahead of time is how will the schools, if we're doing this at the school level, which is what we would recommend from our organization, how will the schools let the district know their planning activities and their anticipated planning expenses? The schools will have to let the district know that so that the district can compile all that information into one grant app coming from the district. So again, just some organizational things that need to happen before we can write the grant. Okay, so in terms of writing your grant, on our web page, on the Lilly page of our website, there's a document called Writing Your Lilly Counseling Initiative Planning Grant Application Tips. And what we've done is we've taken each of the components that are required in the planning grant, and we've teased them out with some suggestions and tips for writing each, and for some we've even provided some sample language just to kind of give you a place to start in terms of what that might look like when you get it into your application. I would encourage you not to just cut and paste. I think this is something that, it's a planning grant. You need to really engage in that planning and the writing. So, but we tried to just give you some samples once in a while so that you could see what that might look like when it got to your application. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of that, but I'm just going to guide you towards that document that's found at asainstitute.org/Lilly, and you'll see that that document that's available for your use. Okay, then as we close, I'd like to remind you that this is the second of a four-part video series. The next two parts are going to cover the technical assistance that we will provide as you write your planning grant. So all through this this video, I kind of talked about what in our organization we kind of suggest that schools do things this way. And actually we just think that's best practices no matter what you do. If you work with a technical assistance provider or you don't, we think those are the kinds of discussions you should have, that's who should be at the table, etc. But we also would like to explain to you the technical assistance that we provide to help schools and districts do those things. So the next two videos are going to talk specifically about redesigning school counseling in schools. That'll talk about what RSC is, what services, deliverables we provide, what process the schools go through, and just kind of explains the whole program. Just a heads up too, schools in Indiana use RSC to earn the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award and the ASCA RAMP Award at the national level. And so in addition to using this process to develop in the planning phase for Lilly, you can also use the same process to earn the Gold Star and the RAMP Awards. And then beginning in January, we're offering a new initiative for districts, RSC for districts, that would help districts coordinate the schools that are involved in this initiative, as well as look at district-level data and to discover places where you can help schools to implement their initiatives, or where you can help schools join forces if they have similar goals or similar activities that they're planning to implement. So the next two videos will talk about that. And again, remember that the purpose of all this is to help Indiana Public School Districts understand how RSC can be used during the planning phase in the Lilly School Counseling Initiative. And all of these videos are available again at asainstitute.org/Lilly. Okay, questions about Lilly, the Lilly School Counseling Initiative should be directed to Lilly, and you can send an email to education@lei.org. And questions about redesigning school counseling or how to use RSC during the planning phase for Lilly's grant, those questions should be directed to us, the American Student Achievement Institute, and then our email address is asai@asainstitute.org. And there's our phone number, 812-349-4142. So thanks everybody, and I wish you lots of luck as you plan for your planning phase and write your planning grant. And again, if we can be of any assistance to bounce an idea off of or ask a question to, please don't hesitate to call us. We are eager to help. And we hope you'll join us in our next two webinars. Thanks everyone.